Hello and welcome to another lap guide for the Camel GT series in iRacing. This week we are at Road Atlanta, which is 2017 Season 1, Week 4. So here's the lap without commentary first. Okay, so before I go into that turn by turn, just a couple of things to mention about the lap here. This was on 80 degree Fahrenheit track temperature, which is about an average. I saw anywhere from 68 or so up to 90 track temp Fahrenheit. And so this is what I use to work on my setup to try to get that dialed in. I did run some sessions in cooler track temp, and I will mention that the setup that I have and that I used here is with 8 wing. If the track is cooler than this, you can actually get away with 7 wing pretty reasonably well, at least in qualifying trim. The setup I haven't tested to a great degree with race fuel to really be sure if the 7 wing would work well or not in a race, but probably would be okay. Just to show what's possible there. With cooler track temp, anywhere it looks like an optimal of like 107.3 is actually possible. So obviously track time and lap times will always vary based on weather. This was a 108.337. So let's go ahead and go into turn by turn here. Before I go into that, I want to just quick shout out to Michael Parks. He gave me a tip on using some of the camera controls. Hopefully I can get a better hang of that. I've set up the key bindings, and I also created a custom camera group so I can toggle between cockpit and chase cam much more easily there, so hopefully less fumbling around with that. So let's go up to turn one here. Okay, so approaching turn one, you want to carry as much speed and use as much track as you can here to do so. Using the line here on the left to kind of run the car right up into the where the line kind of bends here. That's a good visual reference for where you want to start to turn in. So you can see I've already kind of started to turn just a little bit ahead of that. So I think I typically turn in, I don't know, probably closer to where the yellow line starts here. So a little ahead of that. You can actually get away with just the throttle lift here in cooler weather. You'll see me braking pretty quickly here and then turning the wheel in at relatively quick turn in for how fast the car is going at this point. Car only gets to about 30% or so braking, and very quick braking. As I'm letting off the throttle, there's a bit of an overlap there. And at this point, aiming to get the car as close to the right-hand curb as possible, and also getting back on throttle by the time you get to that apex. So you'll see a little bit of trail braking here to kind of help control the amount of speed to make sure I can get the car over to that point, and then back on throttle at that point. So on the exit of turn one, I don't like to run too wide. I find that if I get the car too wide or too far left here, closer to the curb, that it's more difficult takes a little bit more time, and you actually have to slow the car to get it set up for turns 2 and 3, which to me are the most difficult corners on the track. And so I'm going to probably spend a lot of time talking about turns 2 and 3 here. I'm going to show a couple of different laps that I used here to show a few different lines that could actually be used there, and what I find most comfortable. Before I do that, let's watch this back at speed, at cockpit view. So coming out of turn 1, visual references that I use this structure. It's a little closer on track, and it catches my eye. Now, the tree is probably a better reference because I'm really pointing more directly toward the tree, but that's where I want to get the car pointed and get set up for getting around turn 2 and into the braking zone prior to turn 3. So full throttle all the way up here. And now at this point, again, very difficult to see where you want to get the car to get to. So it takes repetition. I mean, you could look for visual cues here in the trees, but just as you come up over this crest, you can start to see the curbing here on the left, and that's the reference point for where you want to get the left side of the car. And you can get it just a little bit up on the curbing, but I try to just get it right next to it. In this case, I get the car not quite as close as I'd like to. You can see I've got a little bit of spacing here. I'm going to show another lap where I took a different line through this corner, because I think turn 3 deserves a lot of attention here, because it's pretty difficult for me anyway to get consistent. Braking is about 50%. I think I hold 50% for a little bit here. So braking, my reference for braking, or knowing where I'm braking, is really just alongside once I reach the curbing. So you can see throttle will start to let off, and then I'll start to brake there. And reaching 50% or so about midway through or past the curbing here. So turning in here, as I mentioned, there's a few lines you can take here. This line that I'm showing is what I found to be the line that I take most frequently, and it just feels most comfortable for me. I want to carry as much speed through this corner, and while it's possible to still carry the speed while taking a line that just kind of grazes this curbing here, which I'll show you here in a second, this to me is a comfortable line that I can do. I can repeat it consistently, and I feel like the car can get across the curbing here without too much trouble. So by the time I reach this curbing, I want to be off braking and throttle, and I just want to carry the speed across. And if we watch that a few times here at speed, you can kind of see that happens I mean, I guess considering the curbing that I'm hitting, it happens fairly smoothly. And I'm really right where I want the car to be pointed as I start to accelerate out. And I'm already at full throttle. Just as I cross that, I'm back on throttle just as I get off the curbing. Now the alternate line I want to show, one of these laps I made note of. This lap, I checked the sectors. This lap has an identical sector time through that with a different line. So let's take a look at the line. So I did a better job on the approach to turn 3. I got the car right where I'd like to get it, which is maybe just touching this curbing here on the left. And this is, of course, in the braking zone, getting ready to kind of, open up the line into turn 3. And you'll see that this line doesn't go across the curbing at all. Now, what I found is that that's actually more difficult to do consistently, for me anyway, without losing speed. And you'll see the car actually seems to slide just a little bit here. And with warmer weather and maybe with more fuel, heavier fuel tank, that probably is you're probably gonna scrub off even more speed there. So anyway, it's just an example of maybe a different approach and a different line, and to show that that can be taken a few different ways. There's even another line that you can take through here that takes even more, and it almost seems to unsettle the car less, but it's very close to an off track, and I found it very difficult to hit consistently, where in some cases the car would just take an odd bounce and you could end up spinning. So it was just real risky to do so. So anyway, let's get back to the lap that we're looking at here from the first replay. Jump up to where we're at. Okay. So coming out of turn 3, and as you approach the S's, what you want to do is you want to stay full throttle all the way through if you can. Now, typically, as you're coming around this corner, you're going to have to let off a little bit to get set up for the next set of S's here. So I'll be full throttle, and then I think I'll lift just a little bit so I can get the car to the left and set it up for the next set of corners here. Yeah, so you saw just a little lift there. Now you want to get the car to the left. You don't necessarily have to get it all the way to the curbing here. The car gets through the S's relatively easily, especially in the cooler temps here that we have for this week. And the point is getting the car set up on the left-hand side so that as you get through the next 3 sections of these S's, that you can keep it snug, full throttle, and just kind of get the car right up to the curbing through the S's here. So let's watch that again from cockpit view. Okay, so turn 5, and the braking and setting up for turn 5 is important to hit correctly. Your braking zone is right along the right-hand curbing here, and you can see I'm just barely starting to get on the brakes at this point. And you'll see I've got a little bit of an overlap between brake and throttle there. Full braking is about halfway, as you reach the curbing, about halfway through, 50% braking. And by the time, and there's a blip for downshift, down into 3rd gear. So just for reference, I'm in 4th gear all the way through here. If you're really flying, and especially in cooler weather, you can actually get up into 5th gear here briefly too. So downshift into 3rd here before you turn in, and so the car is now in 3rd and starting to turn in. And at this point, you need to start getting off the brakes to the point where you're maybe just trail braking. And this is a real difficult corner to master, I guess, because I found that to carry the most amount of speed here, you're always going to be running off to the curbing on the right, which is okay to do, but don't worry about doing that, because if you try to turn away from this curbing, it's a common mistake that results in a spin. This is also a common place to spin if your tires aren't warmed up yet. So just be wary of that. The idea is to get the car as close to this curbing without touching it, so that you don't unsettle the car. And then as you come across here, start to ease on the throttle. But be careful getting back to full throttle, because if I go to full throttle right here, again, it's probably going to spin. So I'm actually not full throttle until I'm actually up on the curbing here at this point. So just as I come up on the curbing and the car's settled, pointing relatively straight here, I can get back to full throttle and then carry that all the way through. There's no reason to lift as you go across the curbing here. All right, so turn 6, the braking the point to start braking is this line, or the 200 board. I think I reached threshold braking in between these 2 lines. Yeah, so right about there, right in between, it's about 70% or so braking. The car is in fourth gear at this point, but I'll be shifting down into third, so there'll be a quick blip down into third, and just as I start to turn in, I'm off braking, off throttle, and aiming to get the car close to the curbing here on to the right. A little bit of trail braking to make sure I get it nice and snug. And again, you want to be back on throttle pretty quickly here. You can carry, because of the camber of the road here, you can carry quite a bit of speed through here. I don't think I get any lower than about 104 or 105. Yeah, 104 miles per hour. And so there's a lot of speed you can carry through here. So if we watch this back at speed, getting back on throttle and getting the car over to the left to set up another very important corner. So turn 7. Turn 7 is pretty difficult to hit consistently, especially as you find yourself carrying more and more speed. So the better you get at turn 6. As I come to the end. Okay, so as I come to the end of the curbing here, I want to be turning in at or before reaching the end of the curbing here on the left. And so I'm kind of visually just looking at that. That's a good reference point to keep an eye on for where you need to start turning in. Braking happens at this point. I don't have a visual reference for it. I brake just kind of where I feel like I need to stop the car, I guess. Not real hard braking, 40% or so, 40 to 50% there. And starting to turn in now to make sure that I can reach the curbing here to the right without touching it, hopefully. And I think I do touch it here in this lap just a little bit. Doing that and going into too much to the curbing to the right will actually affect how soon you can get on throttle. So that's why you want to avoid that. It's just not a smooth exit. So right as I reach that curbing there, you can see that I get just a little too close. The car just grazes it, but that was fine. Back on throttle already. You can see that this is going to be fed in very, very gradually. And typically I don't get to full throttle until I've actually crossed the track here. So there's full throttle there, right at that point. So really you want to get the car straightened up. I'm using a little bit of the track to the left to kind of help guide the car along the left-hand line. So I've got plenty of space to straighten it up and throttle out at that point. Okay, so let's get down here. Turns 10, I think they're called 10A and 10B. The reference point for braking is after the 100 actually. So it's actually maybe just between the 100 and the curbing here. So right in between there, you want a threshold brake. And I actually found that I didn't really need to brake quite as hard as I thought I would need to. I mean, you're obviously going, what, 175 miles per hour at this point. And what happened to my, oh, I got the wrong, my hotkeys stopped working, darn it. Okay, so you'll see that I get to threshold braking right about that point. What happened? Why did the hotkey stop? Darn it. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Fix that. That's weird. All right. So I just have to do that manually from here. So this is where I'm at threshold braking. It actually is 80% braking, but that's not held for very long. And what I try to do here is to use all of the curbing on entry. So you can see I've got the car well over and just touching the grass even slightly. So I like to use all of the curbing on entry. And in this particular lap, I didn't get the car left quite as much as I typically like to do, and I used more curbing on the right than I also like to do. So I turned in a little early. What I usually try to do is for the right tires to kind of follow the yellow line on exit to make sure I can get on throttle soon and not get any kind of any spin or unsettling of the car there. But in this case, it worked out. I didn't quite take too much. You can see the car bumps a little bit, but I was still able to get on throttle and back on full throttle here by the time the car's crossed over to the left. There's full throttle. So visual cues to use. Let's go back to cockpit view through here. So turning in is well before the end of the curbing here. I don't look at any cues here. What I try to do is focus on the curbing to the left and just aim for that as I get closer. And then what I like to do is try to exit to the left enough that I can kind of follow that line to the right and then get to full throttle. And you can use the curbing here on the left. The line that I typically take through here doesn't cross into that curbing too much. And again, as you come up over the crest here and you can't quite see where you're going onto the exit, get the car pointed toward the yellow in the flag here, or sign. What is that? Lights? I don't know. So you can kind of get the car pointed to the left-hand side of this, and that will actually get you exiting about where you need to be. And this is all full throttle, obviously, all the way out. Okay, so that's a lap guide of Road Atlanta. Hope you found that helpful. Talk to you later.